Vexara held her children close as the refugee shuttle shook. During its final approach to Earth's orbital station, Alpha, her blue-scaled skin had lost much of its shine over the 3 months of space travel. The small bag at her feet contained everything they had managed to save when they fled their dying world of Nelith. "Are we safe now, Mother?" asked Nex, her youngest child. His voice quivered slightly, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in the unfamiliar lighting of the human ship. "Soon," Vexara promised, stroking his head crest gently. "The humans have agreed to take in refugees. We will find a new home here." Toril, her older child, remained silent. At 12 Earth years, she understood more about what had happened to their homeworld. She knew that the crystal spires of their city would never again catch the light of their twin suns. The great floating universities where Vexara had taught biochemistry were now nothing but dust. The shuttle docked with a dull thud. A mechanical voice announced in several languages that all passengers should prepare for processing. Vexara checked her translator implant one last time. It was crucial that she make a good impression. As the doors opened, Vexara saw humans for the first time outside of video transmissions. They seemed smaller in person, their skin so strangely smooth, and their movements quick and jerky compared to her people's fluid grace. Most wore the blue uniforms of station security. "Form a line," called a human man with a graying beard and tired eyes. His name badge read Officer Frank Miller. "Have your documentation ready for scanning." The line moved slowly. Vexara watched as other aliens, some she recognized from nearby star systems, others completely foreign to her, were processed. Some were directed to temporary housing. Others, mainly those with special skills or connections, were met by human sponsors who would help them settle on Earth. "Next," Officer Miller called finally. Vexara stepped forward, guiding her children. With a gentle touch, "Species?" Miller asked without looking up from his screen. "Nelithian," Vexara replied, her translator converting her melodic speech into flat English. "I am Vexara, scientific specialist in agricultural biochemistry. These are my children, Toril and Nex." Miller looked up then, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Nelithian ... That's the 3rd planet in the Castor system, right? The one that had the environmental collapse?" "Yes," Vexara said, trying to keep her voice steady. "Our world became uninhabitable. After the sun's radiation shifted, most of our people were evacuated to colony worlds, but those were already overcrowded. My husband did not survive the journey." Miller's expression didn't change. He scanned her documentation chip. "It says here you specialized in enzyme catalysts for crop growth. Is that correct?" Hope flickered in Vexara's chest. "Yes. I developed methods to increase yield by nearly 40% in low-light conditions. My research well regarded. At the University of Nelith's Agricultural Sciences Division." Miller tapped something into his system. "We'll see if any of the research stations need someone with your background. In the meantime, you'll be assigned to temporary housing on level C. Next sector over has a school for non-human children." "Thank you," Vexara said, relief washing over her. Perhaps things would be easier than she had feared. Her relief was short-lived. Over the next 3 days, Vexara visited every research facility on the station. Each one turned her away. "We've filled our alien quota for this quarter," said the Woman at Earth Agricultural Initiative. "Your credentials don't translate well to our systems," explained the man at Terran Botanical Research. "We're looking for someone with experience in Earth crops," said another doc. By the 4th day, Vexara's hope was fading. Their temporary housing allowance would only last another week. After that, they would be transferred to a refugee planet at the edge of human space, a harsh mining world, where she would have no chance to use her skills and her children would have little opportunity for education. That evening, She sat in the common area of the refugee section. Nex played with some simple blocks given to him by a kind worker. Toril sat close to her mother, reading information about Earth on a borrowed datapad. "Mother," Toril said quietly, "why won't they give you work? You were the best on Nelith." Vexara stroked her daughter's head crest. "Humans are cautious about aliens. Since the Proxima incident, they fear what they do not understand." "That's not fair," Toril said, her voice rising slightly. "You didn't do anything wrong." "Life is rarely fair, little one," Vexara replied, "but we must continue to try. Tomorrow I will visit the smaller businesses on the lower levels." Across the room, a human woman with curly brown hair sat watching them. She wore simple clothes, faded blue pants, and a green shirt with a small logo showing a plant growing from water. Unlike most humans on the station, she didn't look away when Vexara glanced in her direction. Instead, she stood up and walked over. "Excuse me," the woman said. "I couldn't help overhearing. You're a biochemist specializing in agriculture?" Vexara straightened her posture. "Yes, I am Vexara of Nelith. I specialized in enzyme catalysts to promote crop growth in difficult conditions." The woman smiled slightly. "I'm Diane Porter. I run a small hydroponics farm outside New Denver. Nothing fancy, just local produce for restaurants and markets." She paused. "My business partner died last year. I've been struggling to keep up ever since." Vexara blinked her inner eyelids in surprise. "You are offering employment?" "Maybe," Diane said. "It's hard work, the pay isn't great, and some people in town might not be friendly at first. But there's a small house on the property where you and your kids could live." Toril looked up at the human woman with wide eyes. Nex had stopped playing and was watching curiously. "Why would you help us when no one else will?" Vexara asked. Diane was quiet for a moment. "My grandmother came to America during a war in her country. No one would hire her except one farmer who didn't care where she came from, only that she knew how to grow things." She shrugged. "Sometimes people forget that kindness matters more than differences." For the first time since leaving her doomed homeworld, Vexara felt something beyond fear and worry. It was small, fragile, but unmistakable. Hope. "I would be honored to work for you, Diane Porter," she said, her translator struggling to convey the depth of emotion in her voice. "With me," Diane corrected with a small smile. "You'd be working with me, not for me. Partners." As Nex came running over to see the human up close, and Toril began asking questions about Earth plants, Vexara realized that perhaps this strange blue world might become home, after all, not because of grand gestures or official programs, but because of one human who saw past her alien appearance to the person beneath. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Vexara and her children traveled on a small transport ship with Diane. The human woman spent much of the trip explaining what life on Earth would be like. Vexara listened carefully, asking questions about the plants they would grow, the town they would live in. "New Denver isn't a big city," Diane explained as they watched Earth grow larger through the viewport. "It started as a farming community about 50 years ago. Most people there have never met an alien. Will they fear us?" Vexara asked, glancing at her children. Toril was reading about Earth plants on a datapad Diane had given her. Nex was sleeping, his blue scales rising and falling with each breath. "Some might," Diane admitted. "Humans can be slow to accept new things, but they're mostly good people. Give them time." The ship landed at a small spaceport outside the city. As they stepped onto Earth for the first time, Vexara felt the stronger gravity pull at her body. The air smelled different from the station, richer somehow, filled with the scent of growing things. "It's heavier here," Toril said, her 4 eyes blinking rapidly as she adjusted. You'll get used to it, Diane assured her. Kids adapt quickly. A ground vehicle waited for them, an old truck with faded green paint. Diane loaded their few belongings into the back and helped them climb in. As they drove away from the spaceport, Vexara saw fields stretching out on either side of the road. Some had tall green plants growing in neat rows. Others held strange round animals that watched the truck pass. Those are cornfields, Diane explained, pointing to the green plants. And those animals are cows. They provide milk and meat. We had similar creatures on Nelith, Vexara said, though ours had 6 legs and produced a sweet blue milk. Diane smiled. Maybe someday you can tell me more about your world. The truck turned onto a smaller road and then again onto a dirt path. After a few minutes, they came to a collection of buildings surrounded by clear domes. Inside the domes, Vexara could see rows of plants growing in water-filled troughs without soil. This is it, Diane said. Porter Hydroponics Farm. Not very impressive, I know. It is wonderful, Vexara said honestly. After months in refugee ships and stations, the sight of growing things filled her with joy. Your technology is different from ours, but the principles must be similar. They parked near a small house with white walls and a blue roof. It sat a short distance from the main farm buildings. This will be your home, Diane said. It's not fancy, but it's clean and the heating works well. I live in the larger house over there. Inside, the house had simple furniture, a table with chairs, 2 beds in separate rooms, and basic cooking equipment. Nex ran from room to room, excited by the space after months in cramped quarters. Toril moved more slowly, examining everything. With careful curiosity. We will take good care of it, Vexara promised. I know you will, Diane said. Rest today. Tomorrow, I'll show you the farm. The next morning, Diane gave them a tour of the hydroponics domes. She explained the water circulation systems, the nutrient mixtures, and the lighting schedules for different plants. Vexara absorbed everything quickly, comparing it to the systems she had worked with on Nilith. Your methods are efficient, she told Diane, but I believe I could suggest some improvements to your nutrient formula. On my world, we discovered that certain enzyme combinations can speed growth without sacrificing flavor. That's exactly why I hired you, Diane said. I need new ideas. As they walked through the last dome, a loud noise made them turn. A human man stood at the entrance, his face red with anger. What the hell, Diane? The man shouted, pointing at Vexara and her children. You brought aliens to work here? Without telling anyone? Diane stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. This is my farm, Steve. I can hire whoever I want. These are the same kind as those Proxima aliens? Steve said. The ones who nearly started a war. We are Nilithian, Vexara said, her translator working to keep her voice steady. We have no connection to the Proxima species. Steve glared at her. All you blueskins look the same to me. The town council will hear about this. After he stormed off, Diane sighed. That's Steve Carpenter. He owns the farm next door. Don't worry about him. Perhaps I should not stay, Vexara said quietly. I do not wish to cause trouble for you. Diane shook her head firmly. Steve doesn't speak for everyone, and he doesn't scare me. You're staying. Over the next few weeks, Vexara learned the daily routine of the farm. She woke early each morning to check the water systems and nutrient levels. The earth plants were different from those on Nelith, but the basic principles of growth remained the same. She began experimenting with small changes to the nutrient mixtures, carefully noting the results. Taral and Nex started lessons with Diane, who taught them about Earth while they taught her about Nelith. In the afternoons, they helped with simple tasks around the farm. Nex particularly enjoyed harvesting the ripe vegetables, his small hands gentle with the fragile plant's dot. Not everyone in town was like Steve, the delivery driver, who came each week to collect produce for the restaurants, smiled at the children, and brought them candy. An older woman who bought vegetables at the weekend market asked Vexara polite questions about her world. A young man who worked part-time on the farm treated them no differently than he would human coworkers. One evening, as they ate dinner, in Diane's house, the human woman asked Vexara about her life before coming to Earth. "I was a professor at the University of Nelith," Vexara explained. "I taught biochemistry and researched ways to grow food with less light. When our sun began to change, making our planet too hot, my work became very important." "And your husband?" Diane asked gently. Vexara's inner eyelids flickered with sadness. Kexter was a climate engineer. He stayed behind with the last teams, trying to save our atmosphere. Their ship was damaged during the evacuation. It never reached the rendezvous point. Diane reached across the table and touched Vexara's hand. Human gesture of comfort the alien was beginning to understand. "I'm sorry," Diane said. "He would be happy that his children are safe," Vexara replied, "and that I have found a place where my knowledge is useful again." A month after their arrival, Vexara made a breakthrough. The modified nutrient formula she had been testing produced tomatoes that grew 30% faster than normal, with better flavor and higher vitamin content. When Diane took them to the weekend market, they sold out in hours. "We need to expand," Diane said excitedly as they counted the day's earnings. "With your formulas, we could supply more restaurants, maybe even the school cafeteria." For the first time since leaving Nelith, Vexara felt truly hopeful. This small farm on a strange planet was becoming home. Her children were learning and growing. Her knowledge was valued. One human had made all the difference. 3 months passed quickly. The farm grew busier as word spread about the special produce from Porter Hydroponics. Restaurants in New Denver began to request specific vegetables grown with Vexara's nutrient formulas. The tomatoes were especially popular, with a sweetness that Earth varieties rarely achieved. One morning, Vengshara was checking the cucumber plants when she heard a commotion outside the dome. She stepped out to find Diane arguing with a group of people. Steve Carpenter was there, along with several others she recognized from town. A woman in a formal suit stood at the front. "What is happening?" Vexara asked, approaching carefully. Woman in the suit turned to her with a tight smile. "I'm Carl Henson, head of the New Denver Market Committee. We've received some concerns about your involvement in food production." "Concerns?" Diane said sharply. "You mean complaints from—" Steve stepped forward. "It's not just me. People have a right to know if aliens are handling their food. What if their biology affects the crops? What if there are health risks?" "That's ridiculous," Diane said. "Vexara is a trained biochemist. She knows more about plant growth than anyone in this town." Carol raised her hands. "We're not saying she can't work here. We're simply proposing that all produce from this farm should be labeled as alien processed at the market." Vexara felt her scales tighten against her body, a Nelithian response to stress. "My methods are based on scientific principles. They are not harmful." "Then you shouldn't mind the labels," Steve said with a smirk. "This is discrimination," Diane argued. "You don't label food grown by humans of different nationalities." Carol shook her head. "This isn't about nationality. It's about species. The committee will vote next week. Until then, you can continue as normal." After they left, Diane kicked a bucket in frustration. "I'm sorry, Vexara. Some humans are just afraid of anything different." "I understand fear," Vexara said quietly. "When our sun began to change on Nelith, many became fearful and suspicious. It is a natural response to change." Diane looked at her with surprise. How are you so calm about this? Being angry will not help my children, Vexara replied. I must focus on what I can control. And right now, that is making this farm successful. That evening, when the children were asleep, Vexara worked late in the small lab Diane had set up for her. She carefully mixed new formulas, testing them on seedlings. If they wanted to convince the town that her methods were safe, they needed results no one could argue with. A soft knock at the door made her look up. Diane entered with 2 cups of hot liquid. I brought you some tea, she said, placing 1 cup beside Vexara. It's getting cold outside. Thank you. Vexara sniffed the tea curiously before taking a small sip. The warm liquid was pleasant, though strange to her taste. What are you working on so late? Diane asked, looking at the rows of seedlings. A new formula, Vexara explained. On Nelith, we developed enzymes that could break down toxins in soil. I believe I can adapt them to eliminate the fungal spores that damaged your western fields last season. Diane watched her work for a while. You know, when I offered you a job, I thought you'd just help around the farm. I never expected all this. Is it too much? Vexara asked, suddenly worried. Have I overstepped? No, Diane laughed. It's amazing. My little farm has never done so well. Her smile faded. I just hate that some people can't see past their prejudice to appreciate what you bring to this community. Change takes time, Vexara said. On my world, it took many years for some regions to accept new growing methods, even when the old ways were failing. The next day, Vexara went to the small school where Toril and Nex were studying. The teacher, Mr. Bill Jackson, had asked to speak with her. Her scales tightened with worry as she entered the classroom. Had there been problems? To her surprise, Mr. Jackson greeted her warmly. Mrs. Vexara, thank you for coming. I wanted to show you something. He led her to a display at the back of the room. There, beside projects from other students, stood a model of a hydroponics system. Toril's name was on a card beside it. Your daughter created this for our science fair, Mr. Jackson explained. She combined Earth hydroponics with something she called Nelithian light diffusion. It won first prize. Vexara's inner eyelids fluttered rapidly with emotion. She remembered. That was a system her father designed. She told us about him, Mr. Jackson said gently. She's a remarkable child. Both your children are adapting well here. As they talked, Vexara noticed something on the wall, a map with colorful pins. Next to it hung a sign that read, Our family's origins. The students added pins showing where their families came from, Mr. Jackson explained. Most are from other parts of Earth, of course. Vexara spotted a blue pin far from the others, in the empty space representing the stars. Next to it, someone had carefully written Nelith. The other children asked if Toril and Nex could show where they came from. Mr. Jackson said, They've been teaching their classmates about your world. That weekend at the farmer's market, Vexara noticed something different. More people stopped at their stand, asking questions about the vegetables. A young couple with a baby bought tomatoes after hearing about their higher vitamin content. An older man purchased cucumber seedlings, asking Vexara detailed questions about care. What changed? She asked Diane as they packed up that afternoon. Word is spreading, Diane replied. And honestly, I think Carol's committee is helping us. People are curious about the alien vegetables. A week later, the market committee held their vote. Vexara and Diane attended, standing nervously at the back of the town hall. Steve Carpenter spoke first, repeating his concerns about alien influence on food safety. Then, unexpectedly, others began to speak. The owner of the popular restaurant Garden Table talked about how customers loved the taste of their produce. The school cafeteria manager mentioned the improved nutrition values. Even Mr. Jackson spoke about the educational benefit of having a scientific expert in their community. When the votes were counted, the committee decided against special labeling by a narrow margin. Carol looked displeased, but accepted the outcome. As they walked back to the truck, Diane nudged Vexara gently. "See? I told you people would come around." "Not all of them," Vexara said, glancing at Steve, who was stomping away angrily. "No, not all," Diane agreed, "but enough. And that's how change happens, one person at a time." That night, as Vexara tucked her children into bed, Toril asked a question that caught her by surprise. "Mother, is Earth our home now?" Vexara was silent for a moment. She thought of Nelith, with its crystal spires and purple skies. She thought of Kexter, who would never see his children grow up. Then she thought of the farm, of Diane, of Mr. Jackson, and the blue pin on the map. "Yes," she said finally, "I believe it is becoming our home." 6 months had passed since Vexara and her children arrived on Earth. Winter came to New Denver, covering the land outside the farm domes with a blanket of white snow. Vexara found the cold fascinating and frightening at the same time. On Nelith, the temperature had always been warm, even as their sun changed in other ways. The farm continued to thrive despite the winter. Inside the climate-controlled domes, plants grew in neat rows, their leaves green and healthy. Vexara had developed 5 different nutrient formulas, each designed for specific types of vegetables. The latest one, created for leafy greens, produced lettuce and spinach that grew twice as fast as normal Earth varieties. Diane had hired 2 more workers to help with the increased production. Jake Wilson and Maria Lopez quickly became friends with Vexara and her children. They seemed curious rather than fearful about working with aliens, often asking questions about Nelith during lunch breaks. Nex had grown 2 inches taller and was now speaking English well, though his translator implant still helped with difficult words. He had made friends at school and often came home excited about human games and stories. Toril remained more serious, but she too had found her place, joining the school science club where her knowledge of Nelithian biology impressed both students. And teachers. One cold morning, Vexara was checking the tomato plants when Diane burst into the dome, her face pale with worry. "There's trouble," she said, holding up a small screen. "Big trouble." Vexara put down her tools. "What has happened?" Diane showed her the screen. "A fungal blight has been detected in the western farming region. They've never seen anything like it before. It's spreading fast, killing crops in days." Vexara studied the images on the screen. The plants were withered, covered with dark spots. "This appears similar to the Kelper moon blight," she said. "A fungus that spreads through water rather than air. The agricultural department is sending experts," Diane continued, "but they're saying it could destroy up to 70% of the region's winter crops if they can't stop it." "That would cause food shortages," Vexara said, understanding the implications immediately. Diane nodded grimly. "The town's calling an emergency meeting tonight. We should go." That evening, they gathered in the town hall. It seemed everyone in New Denver had come. Vexara sat with Diane near the back, aware of the curious glances directed her way. The children had stayed home with Maria, who had offered to watch them. At the front of the room stood a tall man in a formal suit. He introduced himself as Alan Wells, the regional agricultural director. "The situation is serious," he told the crowded room. "The blight has already affected 27 farms and is spreading faster than we can contain it. We're flying in emergency supplies, but we need to prepare for shortages." People began asking questions, their voices rising with fear. How would they feed their families? Would prices go up? Could the blight spread to their home gardens? Vexara listened carefully, comparing what she heard to the blight that had once threatened the third moon of Kelper, where Nelithian scientists had established experimental farms. The symptoms sounded remarkably similar. She leaned over to Diane. "I believe I can help." Diane looked at her in surprise. "You know something about this blight?" "We faced a similar problem on Kelper's moon," Vexara explained. "The molecular structure of the fungus appears comparable to what you call Fusarium, Oxysporum, but with a different propagation method." "You should speak up," Diane urged. "Tell them." Vexara hesitated. Many in town had accepted her presence, but offering help for such a serious problem might seem presumptuous. Yet if she could prevent suffering, didn't she have a duty to try? She stood up slowly. The room gradually quieted as people noticed the blue-scaled alien raising her hand. "Excuse me," she said, her translator converting her melodic speech into clear English. "I may have relevant information about this blight." Alan Wells looked surprised, but nodded for her to continue. "On the third moon of Kelper, Nilithian scientists encountered a similar fungal pathogen," Vexara explained. "It shared many characteristics with your Fusarium species, but spread through water systems rather than by spores." "This isn't an alien fungus," someone called out. "It's a Earth pathogen." "Yes," Vexara agreed calmly. "But in nature, similar problems often develop similar solutions across different worlds. We call it convergent evolution. The structure and behavior appear remarkably similar based on the images I've seen." Wells looked interested now. "You're the alien biochemist working at Porter's farm, correct? What exactly are you suggesting?" "On Kelper, we developed an enzymatic countermeasure," Vexara said. "It broke down the fungal structures without harming the plants or soil. I believe I could adapt this formula for Earth crops." The room erupted in debate. Some residents, including Steve Carpenter, shouted that they wouldn't let some alien experiment on our food supply. Others argued that they should try any solution that might work. Diane stood up beside Vexara. "My farm is the only one in the area that hasn't been affected by any fungal problems in the past year. That's not a coincidence. It's because of Vexara. Knowledge and methods." Mayor Betty Harris, a stir woman with gray hair, called for order. "This is a serious offer that deserves consideration. Mr. Wells, what do you think?" Wells studied Vexara thoughtfully. "The standard treatments aren't working. We could test her solution on a small plot before wider application." "That seems reasonable," the mayor agreed. "All in favor of allowing a controlled test?" Hands went up around the room. Vexara counted quickly. It was close, but the majority supported giving her a chance. "Very well," Mayor Harris announced. "Mrs. Vexara will work with the Agricultural Department to test her solution. We'll reconvene in 1 week to hear the results." As people filed out of the town hall, several stopped to speak with Vexara. Some wished her luck. Others asked technical questions about her proposed solution. A few even apologized for not being more welcoming when she first arrived. "See," Diane said as they walked home through the snow. "This is your chance to show everyone what you can do." Vexara looked up at the night sky, so different from the purple twilight of Nelith. "I only hope I can adapt the formula correctly. Earth biochemistry has many similarities to ours, but also important differences." "You'll figure it out," Diane said confidently. "You're the smartest person I know, human or alien." The next day, Vexara began work in her small lab. The Agricultural Department provided samples of infected plants and soil for testing. She worked long hours, carefully adjusting the enzyme ratios to match Earth's biological systems. Toril often joined her after school, helping to measure ingredients and record results. It reminded Vexara of working with her husband in their university laboratory on Nelith before everything changed. "Will your medicine save their plants, Mother?" Toril asked as they tested the 5th version of the formula. "I hope so," Vexara replied. "But even if it doesn't, we learn something from each attempt. That is how science progresses. After 4 days of constant work, Vizara believed she had found the right formula. When applied to infected samples, the enzyme compound stopped the fungal growth within hours. By the next day, the plants began to recover. Alan Wells came to inspect her results himself. He brought 2 other scientists who asked detailed questions and ran their own tests on the formula. "This is remarkable," Wells said finally. "I've never seen anything stop this type of blight so effectively." "Can we use it on the test plot now?" Vexara asked. Wells nodded. "Tomorrow morning. If it works there, we'll have an emergency authorization by the end of the week." As Vexara walked him to the door, he paused. "Why are you helping us? After the way some people treated you when you arrived?" Vexara's inner eyelids flickered thoughtfully. "Because knowledge is meant to be shared. And because one person showed kindness to my family when we needed it most, now I can return that kindness to others." The test field was 5 acres of withered wheat plants. Dark patches of fungus covered the once golden stalks, and the soil beneath felt slimy to the touch. A team of workers wearing protective suits followed Vexara's instructions, spraying her enzyme formula over the infected crops. Diane stood nearby with Alan Wells and other officials, watching anxiously. "How long before we know if it works?" Wells asked. "On Kelper, results were visible within 36 hours, Vexara replied. "Earth plants may respond differently, but I expect similar timing." News of the test spread quickly through New Denver and surrounding towns. The next day, curious people gathered at the edge of the field, watching from a safe distance. Some brought cameras to record what happened. Others simply wanted to see the alien solution in action. Among the watchers was Steve Carpenter. He stood apart from the others, his arms crossed and his expression doubtful. When he noticed Vexara looking his way, he quickly turned and walked back to his truck. By evening, the first signs of improvement appeared. The dark fungal patches had stopped growing, and soil samples showed decreasing levels of the pathogen. Wells and his team worked through the night, taking measurements and running tests. Vexara barely slept. She stayed in a small trailer at the edge of the field, adjusting the formula as new data came in. Toril and Nex remained at home with Maria, though they called several times to ask about the progress. On the morning of the second day, Vexara stepped out of the trailer and gasped. The field had transformed overnight. The fungal patches had turned gray and were crumbling away. New green shoots were already pushing up through the soil in areas where the wheat had died completely. "It's working!" Diane exclaimed, rushing to Vexara's side. "Look at those new sprouts!" Wells approached with a broad smile. "The latest samples show no live fungal cells at all. And the soil chemistry is actually improving. There's increased nitrogen and beneficial bacteria levels. The enzymes break down the fungus into components that feed the soil," Vexara explained. "On Kelper, we found that treated fields became more fertile than before the blight." Word of the success spread quickly. By that afternoon, the mayor called another town meeting. This time, the town hall was so crowded that some people had to stand outside, listening through open windows, despite the cold. Mayor Harris called for quiet. "As you've heard, the test has been successful. The Agricultural Department has authorized emergency use of the formula across all affected areas. Treatment will begin tomorrow." The room erupted in applause. When it quieted, the mayor continued. "We owe our thanks to Mrs. Vexara, whose knowledge and quick action may have saved this region from a food crisis." Vexara felt her scales warm with embarrassment as people turned to look at her. She was not used to such attention. "Would you like to say a few words?" the mayor asked, gesturing to the front of the room. Hesitantly, Vexara moved forward. As she faced the crowd, She saw many familiar faces: Diane, smiling proudly, Mr. Jackson from the school, Maria and Jake from the farm, even Carol Henson, who had once wanted to label her produce as alien processed. "I am grateful for the opportunity to help," Vexara said simply. "When my family came to Earth, we had lost everything. One person," she glanced at Diane, "saw beyond our differences and gave us a chance. That kindness changed our lives. Today, I was able to return some small portion of that kindness." After the meeting, many people approached to thank her. Some apologized for their earlier suspicion. Others asked questions about her work and her world. A woman from the university in the nearby city offered her a consulting position with their agricultural department. Even Steve Carpenter came forward, looking uncomfortable but determined. "I was wrong about you," he admitted gruffly. "My grandfather lost his farm during a blight back in the 2000s. I guess I was afraid it would happen again." He extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. "Thank you for saving our crops." 3 months later, spring came to New Denver. The fields that had been threatened by the blight now grew lush with new crops. Vexara divided her time between Porter Hydroponics, which had expanded to 3 more domes, and her new role as consultant to both the university and the regional agricultural department. Her enzyme formula had been approved for general use, and farmers across the country were reporting excellent results. The United Earth Agricultural Commission had contacted her about a formal position as a xenobiological consultant. With access to research facilities and resources she had only dreamed of. One warm evening, Vexara sat on the porch of their house, watching Toril and Nex play with neighborhood children in the yard. The game involved catching a ball and looked simple, but the children's laughter made it seem wonderful. Diane joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. "Penny, for your thoughts?" "I was thinking about circles," Vexara said. "On Nelith, we believed in the circle of fate, that actions return to their source, multiplied. Like karma," Diane said, nodding. "What goes around comes around. When you offered me work that day on the station, you could not have known what would follow," Vexara continued. "One small kindness changed everything, not just for my family, but now for many others." Diane smiled, watching the playing children. "I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time." "There is more news," Vexara said, her inner eyelids fluttering with excitement. "The Earth government has approved my proposal for a cultural exchange program. Next month, 30 Nelithian refugee families will arrive to work with farming communities across this region." Diane's eyes widened. "That's wonderful. Where will they stay?" "Some will live in the new housing being built at the edge of town," Vexara explained. "Others will go to neighboring communities. All will bring their knowledge and skills, as I did. And all because you proved what Nelithians can offer," Diane said proudly. "No," Vexara corrected chiefly. "All because one human saw value in an alien mother who begged for work when everyone else turned away." In the years that followed, New Denver became known as a model of human-alien cooperation. The farming techniques pioneered by Vexara and expanded by other Nelithian scientists helped Earth establish its first successful off-world colonies on Mars, where the challenging growing conditions were similar to those Nelithians had faced. On Kelper's moon, Toril grew up to become a respected xenobiologist, bridging the gap between Earth and alien sciences. Nex became a teacher, helping both human and alien children understand each other's cultures. And on summer evenings, Vexara would sometimes look up at the stars, thinking of her lost homeworld. She still missed Nelith and always would. But here, on Earth, she had found something precious, not just survival, but a true home. A place where her knowledge was valued, her children could thrive, and the circle of kindness continued to grow. reaching out to touch both human and alien lives. All because one person had seen beyond differences to the individual beneath.